Hello there, brave quarantiners out there. This is Tim Giorso, and you are listening to Topics with Tim. Glad to have you back. Glad you have decided to jump on another journey with me through the health world. I'm doing a series called the Top 10 Ingredients in Food That You Need to Avoid. I will be covering one ingredient each time because of those of you that know me, I really like to go in depth with things because that's where you really get to some rooted stuff, and that's where you really figure out how systems work. And it actually leads you to some pretty crazy places. Just in researching what I'm talking about today, I ended up kind of going down a bit of a rabbit hole, if you will, and found some other stuff that's totally unrelated. Well, not completely unrelated, but somewhat unrelated to what I'm talking about today, that now I'm going to go dig into more as well, because just one thing led me to another, because I want to get to the truth, man. I want to know what's true. I don't like being deceived. I don't like being tricked. I don't like when people are dishonest. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give you the best knowledge that I possibly can. I want to arm you so that you will not be deceived. So I really got into nutrition. For those of you who don't know my story, I really got into nutrition in my early 20s because I started having panic attacks, which led to depression, which led to agoraphobia, which led to pretty consistent anxiety. Those of you who've experienced things like that know what I'm talking about and know that it is horrible, something I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. Not even Hitler. I wouldn't even wish it on Hitler. It's mental torture, mental hell. It sucks. So when this was happening to me, among the many things that I was doing at the time to get better, including therapy and all sorts of stuff, I started looking into food, started looking into nutrition. I wanted to see what I was eating, when I was eating it, what my food was comprised of, because shoot, how much of this anxiety is due to that? I'm sure it's not the full picture. I know it wasn't the full picture, but I needed to know what was in my food, because I never really thought about it. I just had eaten whatever I've always eaten, whatever my parents had always eaten, put in the house. So I started to really look into food. I started to log all my food in an app called MyFitnessPal. I started to check over the macros, carbohydrates, fats, protein, to see how much of each I was eating and how much that would affect me. And then I took it even a step further, where I started to research, and I started to dig, and I started to learn about reading the back of food labels and what things actually mean. Because how many of us, raise your hand to yourself, if you looked on the back of one of your food items, picked something out of your pantry and looked on the back and looked at the ingredient label, would you know what even 4 of those ingredients are? Probably not. It's just not something people think about. We kind of have this trust for our food and our food system that is, maybe we're a little too trusting. Maybe we're a little bit too trusting. So now, I believe me, I've gotten crap sometimes because people think I'm a little bit of an ingredient snob. But just so you know, I'm not like, if I'm ever with you and you offer me a food item and I say, hey, let me take a look at it first, I'm probably looking at the label to see what's in it. And if I do end up turning it down, please don't be offended. It's not that I'm better than you. It's not that I'm smarter than you. It's me just making a personal choice for myself that I, look at an ingredient and I don't want that ingredient in my body, and even I will sometimes put ingredients into my body that I don't like. Just I try to do it very little, less often. I make sure that those ingredients I don't want in my body, 90% of the time are not getting into my body. Hey, if I'm at a party somewhere and I maybe it would be a real big pain if I dug through their garbage cans to find the ingredient label to find out what was in it. Hey, this is 1 time out of 10 out of whatever. Sure, I'll just eat whatever. It's not a big deal. So, but I am a little bit of a snob, and I do check my labels. And I think it's a really good thing. I think it's led to me being very healthy at the age of 28 and not having really any health issues at all, and other than like sports injuries. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And my mental health has improved greatly since those early years. Still something that I have to work on, I have to battle with, but much improved. Much improved. since those early 20s. And I think part of it is what I did with nutrition and what I'm still doing with nutrition, and eliminating some foods from my diet that were really hurting me. So the ingredient that we're going to be going into today is called trans fat. Okay, I'm sure we've all heard the term before, but I doubt many of us actually know what it means. So I am going to tell you what it means. Trans fat, they can either be man-made or they can be natural. So there is some trans fat in animal products that is natural, and I would say healthy for you. I encourage, although some modern, and again, this is when I was researching today, it took me down some rabbit holes here, so I'll try not to get too far in this hole, but there's a lot of medical journals and things from even reputable sites. WebMD had one, and they really put a lot of negative connotation on any sort of animal saturated fats, that they're so bad for you, blah blah blah. I think that's garbage. I don't believe that. I think that as long as you're getting them from good sources who are, feeding the animals the right thing and not pumping them full of antibiotics and not locking them in cages all day. Like there are some things that you can do that are not natural that will cause animal products to be bad. In the same way that there's things that you can do to crops that is also bad and unnatural and will lead to your crops. I won't get into too much into this, but one of this sort of rabbit hole took me on to learning about permaculture. And what permaculture is it's called permanent agriculture. And what we have today, we have factory farms that are killing our soil, that are wreaking havoc on our ability to make food consistently. And so it's not just animals here, guys. It's not just animals are bad. It's factory farming. It's what are we doing to our crops? What are we doing to the crops that then feed our animals that we're then eating? Okay, so there's a lot more to it than that. But going back to trans fats, so trans fats, naturally occurring in animals, which again, I would say is fine. It's healthy. There are good fats out there. But then there are things called man-made trans fats, and these are typically, you take some sort of vegetable oil, and I could go into a whole thing about vegetable oils and how they're definitely not the healthiest oils. They're not the ones you want. You want coconut oil, you want olive oil. You want to avoid vegetable oils. They're high in omega-6, which those of you who don't know much about omega-6, we have a sort of a balance in our body between omega-6 and omega-3. And that's something I'll probably cover on a future pod because that's going to take a whole other level of digging on that one. So I don't want to talk too much about it since I haven't researched it a ton. But omega-3, good. Omega-6, bad. Omega-6 is in vegetable oils. Omega-3 is in, fish and olive oil and coconut oil, good things. So anyway, we're talking about man-made trans fat. So man-made trans fat is basically a chemical design. It's man-made, right? It was made in a lab. So what they do is they take a vegetable oil, which are, again, we already know that vegetable oils are not the best oil to use, and they infuse it with hydrogen. Now, this makes the oil actually become solid at room temperature. Okay, and the reason that a lot of food companies like to use this is because, number one, it's super cheap. Number two, it's pretty easy to use. And number three is it dramatically increases the shelf life of foods. They last a lot longer. So you're looking at all that and you're like, oh, that's a good thing. The food producers save money. It's easy to use. Our foods last longer without going bad. I mean, what can be bad about that? Well, as we find when we do things that are unnatural, we see a negative result. So mainly the reason that trans fats are so bad are because of what they do to our cholesterol. Okay, there's another word for you, cholesterol. Okay, so we've got trans fat, right? It's either man-made or it's natural. Okay, so we're talking about man-made. Okay, so what this does to your cholesterol levels. Now, those of you listening, what is cholesterol, right? You probably heard that a million times. You probably heard all this stuff. Oh, you can't have a high cholesterol. It's bad for you. You might have even stopped eating eggs or stopped eating some saturated fats because somebody told you, ooh, those have a lot of cholesterol and you need to keep your cholesterol down. I'm here to inform you that although there's just, you need to know more. You need to know more. Cholesterol, there's actually two types of cholesterol. We have what's called LDL cholesterol and HDL cholesterol. Okay? LDL is bad cholesterol. HDL is good cholesterol. So when someone brings up cholesterol to you, next time I want you to say to them, hey, what type of cholesterol are you talking about? Because you can't just group them all together, because there's a good cholesterol and a bad. Okay? So cholesterol. How does cholesterol work? It's another great question. So imagine that you are on a highway, a big highway. It's super wide, lots of lanes, 6 lanes, maybe more. Okay? Now imagine that highway is your bloodstream. Okay? Those are your veins. That are your red blood cells are the cars. Right? They got to get from place to place. They got to move. Hey, this guy's doing an upper body workout. Shoot, we got to get some more red blood cells up to those muscles, because they're using oxygen, and they need more oxygen. You know, your body is your veins are essentially a giant highway system so your red blood cells can travel throughout your body. That's what your veins, that's what your arteries are doing. That's the purpose of them. Right? You see why, guys, they work out a lot, they get a lot of veins in their arms and things like that. It's because when you work out, you're using certain muscle groups, and those muscle groups need oxygen to continue to perform without failure. And so your body has to keep building more and more avenues to get to those muscles that you're working. So it could actually, arteries will branch off and actually create more. It's like more roads are being built every day if you're exercising certain muscle groups and things like that, which is why you'll get a ton of veins, or your veins will get bigger, right? Because they'll need to expand the same way that recently our Hazel had to expand, right? There's a lot of traffic going through it, so they expanded it to 3 lanes now instead of 2 to kind of reduce the traffic. That's how your arteries work. They work the same way. We're trying to reduce traffic. We're trying to get red blood cells where they need to go as fast as they can, like we're all doing on the roads. So imagine you have this nice healthy blood vessel. You got 6-lane highway. It's going smooth. All the cells are having no issues, no obstructions, just going straight through, getting where they need to go. So LDL is so cholesterol, right? So let's say there's an accident. Okay, let's say, and the accident into your body would basically be that, like, your artery would get nicked by something. Okay, so an accident happens, maybe cars crash, your artery gets nicked, right? So that's where cholesterol comes in. Cholesterol are the police and fire and health department, right? Imagine the siren. They're jetting over to that nick in your artery so they can heal it, right? Just like cops, and they would come. They want to clean up the accident as fast as they can because they want to keep cars going through, and they don't want a big giant traffic jam, right? So they get there, they clean it up, they push everything off to the side of the road, they get people out of there who need medical attention, and boom, we all resume our drives to wherever we need to go. So that's cholesterol's job. It's coming in there, it's healing, it covers up the nick. Its goal is to heal that artery, keep everything moving well. Okay? So imagine LDL is the cholesterol, but imagine it's maybe some workers who are a little lazy. And they don't really, they get out there and, they see the wreckage there, and they take their sweet time removing it. Maybe they don't remove it at all. Maybe they just, leave the vehicles there. They leave the obstruction there, and they're like, no rush, and maybe they get people out of there who need health care, and then they just leave the wreckage there. Who cares? That's LDL for you. Okay, so what happens now if you have a lot of LDL, right? So when that person says you have high cholesterol, and you're asking, what kind of cholesterol do you have? Is it LDL? So if you have really high LDL, then you're going to have a lot of these obstructions on your highways. And that's going to cause traffic jams for your cells, right? It's going to cause them to be clogged. Things can't get there as faster. And over time, you could have a heart attack. Because if enough obstructions happen that don't get cleaned up and don't get removed and don't get back to pristine, then the more clogs, and then eventually you get what's called a blood clot, where your blood can't move. And that's when you have strokes, and that's when you have heart attacks, or when blood no longer can get, oxygen can no longer get to where it needs to go because there's too many traffic, it's too clogged for things to get through. So cholesterol is very important. Very important. So think about that. Don't just, oh, my cholesterol is high. No, you got what kind of cholesterol we talking here, okay? So when you hear that eggs have cholesterol, or that butter has cholesterol, or the animal fats have cholesterol, that is not a bad thing. That is not a negative thing. It's what kind of cholesterol, okay? So, and not really what kind of cholesterol, it's what is that going to do to your cholesterol levels is really what you should be asking yourself, right? So a natural trans fat would not raise those LDL levels. And that actually, it'll raise those HDLs because you're getting good, healthy fats. Like eggs. Eggs are healthy. People, you want to crap on bacon? I mean, other than when we get another thing about the stuff that's put into the meat, but the meat itself, without added things, totally healthy. And will raise those HDL levels. Now, again, so I think people get confused. They are told bacon and eggs, oh, it's bad, so bad. Well, what are those things cooked in, right? If you take bacon by itself, without adding like the nitrites that they add to try to increase the shelf life, which are toxic, without maybe what oil it's been cooked in, right? If it's been cooked in oil, vegetable oil, that's been, infused with man-made trans fat, then yeah, that meat is now not healthy for you to eat. But it's not the meat's fault. It's what it's been cooked in and what's been put in the meat. That is the problem. So we need to think a little bit deeper when we think about all this stuff about saturated fats and meats and even going into like vegetarian and veganism. We have to think a little bit more. Okay, it's not the meat itself that's bad. There's what's put into the meat after, there's what's done to the animal before, which can make that meat no longer healthy for you. But if the meat is treated well, like it should be before, and not stuff added, it's fine. There's nothing bad. So I just want to get that out there, and it does relate to this whole cholesterol thing. So we want our nice highways running smooth. Okay, so that's why we want good HDL. HDL are those the fire department and the cops, they're on top of it, dude. They're there, boom, quick, before you even know it. They got everything cleared off to the side of the road, get everyone who needs health back, boom, the accident's cleaned up in no time, covered up, boom, perfect, everything flows, right? That's HDL. You need that. You want that. That is a good thing, okay? So ask somebody next time they bring up the cholesterol thing, well, what kind of cholesterol are you talking about? Because if they don't know, then don't listen to them, because they don't know what they're talking about. Okay, you got to look a little deeper into these things. So, now an interesting note about cholesterol. So 75% of the cholesterol is actually produced by your body, and you get 25% from foods, which is interesting. So now, here's like the more practical application of this. So you're at the store. You're looking through what you should buy. You're being a little bit of an ingredient snob, which is a good thing. I'm not even going to say snob. I'm going to say ingredients expert or ingredient enlightener. You're an ingredient enlightener. Okay? You're looking at the back of those ingredients and you see, right, because trans fats have actually been banned by the FDA. They're banned in 2015, and they're supposed to have everything out of their foods by 2018, but you still see it. And here's what it's hidden under. Okay, because it's not going to say, in fact, a lot of foods it's going to say free of trans fat. And the crazy part is you can actually have 0.5 grams of man-made trans fat in food and get to market it as no trans fat. So even some of those foods that say no trans fat or 0 grams of trans fat, they could still have up to 0.5 grams of trans fat in there, and they could still say that. Okay? Now, what you will see on this label, you're looking through the ingredients, right? Maybe you see sugar, maybe you see vinegar, whatever it's made out of, right? You're going to want to look for two things. You're going to want to look for partially or fully, doesn't matter. You'll see it either, it'll say, if it's not partially, it won't even say partially. It'll just say hydrogenated. I'm going to spell that for you. Hydrogenated. Hydrogenated. That is trans fat. So there's a few things in my pantry actually that say partially hydrogenated canola oil, or partially hydrogenated palm oil, or partially hydrogenated, whatever oil, vegetable oil that they want is going to say partially hydrogenated. You want to avoid that like the plague. Okay, these are horrible, horrible oils. Again, we just talked about cholesterol, right? They're going to raise your LDL cholesterol. They're going to reduce your HDL. So it's going to increase those lazy workers who literally won't even clean up those car wrecks on the highway. Car wrecks being a metaphor for your arteries. Eventually, your arteries just grow more and more. It's harder for blood vessels to get through until eventually you get stroke, heart attack, blood clots, heart disease. So yes, partially hydrogenated oils are what you are looking for on the back of your ingredient label. If you see it, avoid it. Just find something better. There are things better. There are things without those things. And whatever you buy, you're supporting. So if you buy things with hydrogenated oils, you're supporting that company and telling them, I don't mind that you put hydrogenated oils in my food. Go ahead and put more. I'll keep buying. That's what you're saying to them when you buy that. Okay? Now, according to a JAMA cardiology study, which I got from a video that was produced by Time magazine, studies show that there are fewer cases of heart attack and stroke in areas where trans fats are banned, and there's an increase of those cases in areas where trans fats are still allowed in food. So, boom, right there. More heart attack, more stroke from trans fats. And again, man-made trans fats. I want to keep making that distinction. I don't want to categorize all trans fats as bad, because they're not. They're natural ones that are fine. It's the man-made, the unnatural is what we need to be worried about. Now you can find it everywhere. One area that's going to be, and this is tough because let's say you go to a fast food place, right? They don't necessarily have, there's not really an ingredients label you can read. Sometimes you can ask them for ingredient labels or ask them for nutrition facts. You might even have to Google it. But a lot of fast food restaurants, I'd say vast majority, in order to save a little money, they're going to have vegetable oil, number one, which again, we already know that has a lot of omega-6 fats, which will put your omega-6 to omega-3 balance out of whack, which is important, and I would go into on another time. Where was I going with that? Lost my train of thought. So, yes, oils. So most likely fast food places using a vegetable oil, which can contain trans fats. They might have used oils that have been partially hydrogenated. You wouldn't even know unless you saw an ingredients list from them and they were actually honest on it. Furthermore, high cooking temperatures used during frying can cause the trans fat content of the oil to actually increase, and the trans fat content increases each time the same oil is reused for frying. Let me say that again. High cooking temperatures using the fryer causes trans fat to increase. And again, this is man-made because it's in an oil, not in an animal fat. The trans fat content increases each time the same oil is reused. How many times does McDonald's or Burger King or Jack in the Box reuse the same oil? I can guarantee you probably quite a bit, and it's increasing every time. So you never know how old that oil is when you start when you're there. Could be a new oil they just put in, or it could have been used for a while. You have no idea. So typically, unless you're going to fry your own foods, and you're going to fry them in coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil, then you're most likely getting vegetable oil with trans fats. And even I'm not I still love In-N-Out and go to In-N-Out sometimes. I still That's probably the only fast food place I really go to now I think about it. But even in restaurants, I'm sure in restaurants too, it's probably a lot of the same. Now again, I don't go out super often, so I know that most of the time I'm cooking my own food, I'm getting to see my own food, and so therefore I know I'm not getting a lot of trans fats in my diet. Again, man-made trans fat, let me specify. But they're at this point they're probably not completely avoidable based on that. So now we know about, let's review here real quick. So we know about man-made versus regular trans fats. We now know what those man-made trans fats do to your body, do to your cholesterol, right? They basically block your blood highways until there's nothing left. Okay? We know that cholesterol, there's good and bad cholesterol that can help improve your artery highways. And we know that eating eggs, eating butter, eating dairy products, even animal meats and animal fats is fine. Okay, it's not going to hurt those levels unless the animal was treated really poorly and fed a lot of garbage and filled with antibiotics, or they put in a bunch of chemicals and stuff after the meat and the animal died and the meat was made, or not made, but the meat was taken, and they added a bunch of crap like nitrates and cooked in trans fat oils. Okay, so make sure your meat choices are as grass-fed, as natural as possible, because you're going to get the best quality meat with the highest, good levels of HDL, low levels of LDL, and also watch out for the aftermarket, what they put in it, the nitrites, what they cook it in. If it's something that's sort of pre-cooked, I know bacon kind of comes sort of pre-cooked in a way. So meat is not bad, eggs are not bad, butter's not bad, saturated fat is not bad. I cannot tell you enough that those things are not bad. They are good for you. Again, as long as the animal is treated good, not a bunch of crap in it out. There's butters out there that they've added a whole bunch of garbage to. Okay, and you gotta watch out for margarine and other those fake butters. Most guarantee you, those are gonna be trans fat, man-made trans fat. Okay, so really got to check those ingredients labels a lot. Another interesting note is, so what cholesterol does in our body besides, again, fixing those artery highways, they aid in the production of sex hormones. They are a building block for human tissues and assist in bile production in the liver. So that's just a couple of things cholesterol does on top of helping to maintain your artery health. Okay. Another thing you're going to want to look out for is something called a triglyceride, which is a type of fat that typically stores extra energy from your diet as fat. You do not want high triglyceride levels. So when you go and get your cholesterol tested, you're going to get, hopefully, if it's a good, smart doctor and you've made sure, hey, I want to know HDL, LDL, I want to know about triglycerides. You want to see what your LDL is, what your HDL is, and how many triglycerides you have. Because if your LDL is high and your triglycerides are high and your HDL is low, that is bad. Okay, you want that to be the opposite. You want HDL high, LDL low, triglyceride low. Okay, which is why there is sort of if your cholesterol is above a certain amount, then we know that there is more LDL in the body than there is HDL. So you can sort of conclude if it's high enough to a certain point that you probably have a lot of LDL, but that's not the end all. You can't just take a number and say you have your cholesterol is high or low. Get those specific numbers, because you might actually have pretty good HDL and pretty low LDL, in which case, even if maybe it looks like your score is a little high, but not drastically high, you're probably fine. And again, I think that it's easy to blame meat, it's easy to blame animal products, but most of what causes bad cholesterol, LDL, is sugar, refined carbs. What's our diet? What's our American diet mainly made of? Sugar, refined carbs. And just so you know, refined carbs, what I mean by that is a carbohydrate that's been stripped of its fiber, which is why typically they tell you have whole grains instead, like brown rice instead of white rice, because it has a little bit of fiber. And we can go the whole thing on fiber, but fiber, let's just for now just say it's good for you. You want you want grains. When you're eating carbohydrates, you want carbohydrates with fiber. Unless you're about to you're 2 minutes from a sporting event, in which case you don't want fiber because you want it to be used really quickly. So again, there's so many caveats to so many things. You really have to look into this pretty intricately. But for the most part, other than when you're in the middle of a sporting event or in a workout, you want something that is going to break down slower, which means you want that fiber. And so a lot of what causes these high cholesterol, which is the high LDL, is again not necessarily your saturated fats. It's grains, sugar, which if you're looking at those ingredients labels like I would love you to, you're going to notice how many foods contain sugar. You're going to notice a lot of them do. And you're going to be like, what? There's sugar in peanut butter? Peanut butter's delicious. Why does it need sugar? Yeah, look in your Skippy, look in your Jif. There's added sugar along with hydrogenated trans fat oils. That's in your peanut butter. Now, I love peanut butter. I have peanut butter every day. I make sure I get natural peanut butter that does not have added sugar, because I can add my own sugar if I want, and does not have hydrogenated oils. So if you eat peanut butter, go check your label, go check your ingredient. And unless you're having one of the ones that comes natural with the kind of oil already on top, you're eating some nasty peanut butter that is not healthy for you anymore. Because I think peanut butter, for the most part, it's a healthy thing. It's good fats. But again, the peanut butter isn't bad. What you put into it is bad, and maybe even the way you grow it, with a lot of pesticides or with a lot of that can be bad. So again, it's not the product itself. It's how we're making it and what we're putting in it that is really a lot of times why something ends up being harmful. Okay, so you probably can guess that I'm not a vegan. I don't typically eat vegan or eat vegetarian because I am defending the use of animal products in this. So yeah, so again, let's just do a quick review of trans fat, and then I will let this go. One more study here in the Nurses' Health Study. I got this from WebMD. Women who consumed the greatest amount of trans fats in their diet had a 50% higher risk of heart attack compared to women who consumed the least. Now, I don't know how much of the trans fat was man-made versus natural. They don't say that, so I can't speak to that. I would assume a majority, if not a vast majority of it would be man-made, not what's in animals. So again, we all know what trans fats are, right? Can't be ignorant to it anymore. Look on those labels, partially, or it just says fully, or you probably won't even say fully. It'll just say hydrogenated oil. It can be different oils. You want to avoid that. Okay. Number two, what we learned about cholesterol. We learned what trans fat does to your cholesterol, what cholesterol is and how it works, and how you can actually have good cholesterol. And there are such things as good cholesterol and a lot of saturated fats, as long as the animal was treated good and there wasn't a bunch of crap put in after, very healthy for you as well. Okay? Also your triglyceride levels. Check those too. All right, guys, this has been another Topics with Tim podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something from it. I will be making this into a series because I actually want to break down some other ingredients that you'll find in your foods that I think you should avoid, to be honest. Or, limit, right? No one's perfect. We're all going to be at that party where there's a bunch of food and we're just going to eat it because we're at a party and we want to have fun. We don't want to worry about every little thing. Yeah, that's fine. But for the most part, we have control over what we eat, 90% of the time. Take control of that 90%. Make good choices on that 90%, that 10%, whatever. YOLO. All right, guys. See you next time.